Reactive training systems.
So we're here today answering some questions that we got on the RTS Instagram. I promised you guys we would feature some of the questions, maybe not all of them. Some of them we're going to answer today, and we're hopefully going to do some form of series with this coming forward. So Ross and I are going to be answering some of the questions that you guys did a really good job asking them, really thought-provoking ones. So we're going to answer our favorite questions. Right now we're here in Poland prior to our second seminar of the year in Wrocław, for those of you who prefer just knowing the city name. We have a seminar at Strength Coach Performance Gym. Thought you guys would want to know about that before we get into the questions. One of the questions that came in from, well, maybe we'll keep this anonymous, but the question is, how do you reconcile an emerging strategies plan with a traditional hypertrophy phase? I guess do you have any thoughts about that?
I probably just run a block, an emerging strategies block that has a hypertrophy theme to it. You know, like say for example, a standard emerging strategy block has like a top single at a 1, like for squat, be like a by 1 at 8, and then sets a 5 at 70%. Maybe you just, instead of that, keep that workload in a hypertrophic phase and doing 10s up to maybe a 9 RP with some load drops and things like that nature.
Yeah, the other thing about this question from a fundamental standpoint is that all of the developmental block protocols are designed to do what is necessary to get you to improve your estimated 1 rep max. And there are definitely slots in most emerging strategies protocols that at least that I run and a lot of the coaches I imagine have, that are designed to improve the muscle growth of a certain area. That's why we have exercises designated as supplemental exercises to focus on certain muscle groups that we want to grow during a developmental block. So it all comes down to how specific you want to get. We also have washout weeks for, one of the reasons we have some of the washout weeks is to focus on movements that we just don't have time to dedicate to during the developmental block. And some people are comfortable with that. Other people don't want to spend 6 weeks before they do their next bicep curl. So that's kind of individual dependent and dependent on how the coach wants to run the block and whether or not that works well with the athlete. So there's a lot of things you can do to make sure you're developing hypertrophy and muscle growth. It's not necessarily something crazy that needs to be thought out too much. You just need to know what you're trying to get out of the developmental block and making sure every exercise you select is designed for that purpose. So we got another question coming in.
Yeah, we got one here. I'd love to hear some thoughts from the coaches on advice for younger lifters, more like personal lessons and such. You know, I think at the end of the day, it's important that we as competitive powerlifters, regardless of how invested we are in the process of increasing our 1 rep max and competing and becoming and developing those skills of competing, it's really important that you take care of yourself as a person mentally. And I think having things in your life that allow you to stop stressing and stop thinking are important. I know a couple of important things for me. In the winter, I like to snowboard a lot. In the summer, I like to go out in the woods and nature and do some hiking, fishing, things of that nature. Because when I'm out there doing those things, they're purely for fun, and I can shut down and I can stop thinking and just have a break from a lot of those different pressures from life. And that helps calm me a lot. It helps rejuvenate me mentally and keeps me more mentally prepared for the other stressors of life. And then as well, I think it's important to recognize that it's this is a marathon. Like, it's not, none of this stuff is going to happen overnight. You're not going to go from a 400-pound squat to a 600-pound squat overnight. It's going to be an accumulation of years of training to get to that point. And if you can remove yourself from the need to have that instant gratification and look at it from a long-term standpoint, it's going to take a lot of the stress out of the training, and it's going to make it a lot more fun, which is huge. You should be having fun. You're not most. I don't know of any powerlifter that's making millions of dollars off lifting weights like a professional football player would be. So don't treat it like a job. Still have fun with it.
Yeah, another thing about one of the principles kind of we have as coaches is concept called build momentum or building momentum. It's actually on the back of this shirt. And that really resonates with what Ross is saying, is that it's not about one session that you did well. It's about accumulating those successful sessions, learning from the unsuccessful sessions, and putting together a plan so that you can deal with those situations and cope with those situations where things really aren't going your way. But in the long run, realize that that's just a speed bump. You just got to slow down, do what you got to do to get over it, and then build momentum. So I got another question coming in here about whether or not explosiveness carries over to strength. Should a powerlifter do some jumping and throwing to improve their strength? And I'm sure Ross has his opinion. I'll give mine real quick about that. When you're talking about specificity and what we need, how much time we have to dedicate to improving our performance, sure, there's going to be some benefit to having the ability to produce a lot of force in a short amount of time. But you don't necessarily need to do ball throws or hammer throws or something crazy or jumping to improve the speed. As you get stronger, your speed should improve on lighter loads. So as long as the specificity is accounted for, there shouldn't be a requirement to do depth jumps. That could be a strategy that we utilize. There could be some benefit, there could be some merit to that in certain situations, but I would say from a starting point, it would probably be more beneficial to focus on improving your form, improving your technique, improving your bracing, and your ability to perform that movement specifically in a technically proficient way. And then you can build from there. If you want to throw in jumping and throwing and more plyometric style training, and you notice a benefit, go ahead and keep doing it. But from my experience, I haven't noticed the benefit to outweigh the potential cost from throwing in those exercises.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, and I think, I like to do some of those things for GPP when I have some GPP time and I'm not getting out doing other, my philosophy on GPP is find something that is exercise, induces a stress, and that you have fun doing it. So like snowboarding and hiking for me are big GPP components, and if I'm not getting to do those things and I feel I need some GPP, I'll do stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I really think the benefit for those things are more in like very young athletes to help with athleticism, not so much a seasoned powerlifter. In terms of whether that's going to increase your 1RM, I'd zero.
Yeah, it's more of a, kind of the consensus. It's more of a thing that if you want to work on jumping and throwing, then it'll help your overall athletic ability. But for squatting, benching, and deadlifting, your time might be better spent focusing on squatting, benching, and deadlifting.
Yeah. I mean, those are athletic movements, and they're going to help your athleticism. Powerlifting, the sport, is inherently unathletic. I mean, there's just not a big athleticism requirement in powerlifting compared to Olympic lifting, compared to hockey, compared to football, compared to a lot of those other sports that require a lot more explosive coordination. We move slow.
And there's some data indicating that, if you figure out, if you focus on moving the bar as quickly as possible with as much force as possible, then that could lead to some improvements in your strength. But that's more of from what I understand, it's more of a focus issue and making sure you're dialing in the cues that allow you to produce as much force into the bar instead of doing jumping to improve force. It's just thinking, how can I make sure I'm focused throughout the entire rep and putting as much effort into each rep as I can. I think that can be beneficial, focusing on that. But yeah, we're just kind of going in circles if we go back to the general aspect of jumping and throwing.
Right. A good one here. How sensitive should your monitoring of E1 or M be with emerging strategies? Example is, how big is a typical peak? That can have a large amount of variance from one person to the next. Typically, once you have a general idea for a specific individual, those things generally hold relatively steady. So, say a lifter has a time to peak of 8 weeks and they typically gain around, say, 20 kilos in that 8 weeks. That's probably generally going to stay the same from one development block to the next. With a few exceptions, some lifters are going to respond better to, say, volume work at 70% compared to some traditional stuff at like 90% if you're doing a block periodization, 70, 80, 90. Maybe they don't respond very well to 90, so then just get rid of it. You can stay in 70 and 80 if that's where they respond to, and those are the zones they respond to. So that's one thing that's nice about emerging strategies is when you peel away from the noise and the noise in the data that can be inherent in block periodization, you can learn and see where those intensity zones that they respond best to. I would say that as you're monitoring things, to like where you know that where a lifter peaks, generally like that first one you're gonna run a little bit longer. Say 6 weeks they peak and then week 7 they're down. Keep going, run at 8 weeks, and if they go down again, then you know that they peaked at 6 weeks. But sometimes they could go to 6, down at 7, up at 8, up at 9, and then down.
Yeah, so especially the first block, you need to have some leeway with lifter. You're not really going to know how they respond to a set stimulus week after week after week. So you're going to want to pay a lot of attention, making sure they're not going 3 weeks of regression. But at the same time, if they have 1 or 2 weeks down, it might not tell us the full thing. So first block, focusing on as much as you can. But then there's other things that can happen. So if once you find that the lifter peaks in 6 or 7 weeks, if something happens the next block that didn't happen in the first block, so for example, they're moving to another country or another state, and that's taking 4 days of their time, well, that is going to make the developmental block kind of unstable, in that you're not going to get there's a lot of noise, as Ross was referring to. A lot of that noise is you're moving, your stress is increasing, you're not getting as much sleep. And if those things are happening during a developmental block, you're going to need to kind of assume that this block isn't going to tell us what we need. So in that situation, you might want to move into a washout, but you're still going to need to pay attention. That situation kind of needs to be handled between the lifter and the coach in terms of how they want to move forward. But typically the approach would be, if you're getting a lot of noise, if you're getting a lot of added variables throughout a developmental block that weren't there when you first calculated the time to peak, then you'll probably want to move into a washout week, because that developmental block probably is not going to be as accurate as it was before. Do you agree about that?
Yeah.
Cool. So we got another question, and
I got one ready.
Yeah, ready? Okay, cool.
One I thought is pretty good too. Solutions for muscle imbalances caused by mixed grip deadlift. My general approach, especially if there is not a grip issue, pull your comp deadlift with your mixed grip. All other pulling exercises, use straps so you can just go double overhand and avoid creating a large imbalance from that mixed grip deadlift. And I think if there is a grip issue, then you address that grip issue with some static holds on the comp bent or on the comp deadlift. So say you're doing a top single at 8 by 1 at 8. Once you complete that, hold that for around 10 seconds as long as you can. Hopefully that time will increase as the weeks go by. And then on the down sets and the volume work, do a static hold on the last set of each set after that. Not each rep, just the last rep of each set. And do that as you can, and hopefully you'll see a pattern of increase there, so that'll strengthen the grip, and then still strap up on the other pulling exercises so that you can avoid creating too much of a muscle imbalance.
Cool. Another question, which I think we're going to have some different perspectives on. It comes in, it said, how can you see who is going to be a good athlete, and when can you tell that someone is or isn't created for powerlifting? Which, obviously, this has the potential to be very controversial. I'll just give my perspective, and honestly, you, I don't necessarily know if I have an answer for who is going to be good before I ever started working with them, especially because a lot of times when people start with me, they haven't been in the sport for that long. So some of the habits that they have might indicate they're going to improve, but a lot of that is dictated by, things that I don't even see, especially the higher level lifters I work with. There's a lot that they want from themselves that I have nothing to do with, and a lot of self belief that they have, I think allows them to be great. But when someone's just starting out with me, things like, are they committed to the program? Are they logging their data? Are they tracking everything they can to make sure that at least they're putting themselves in the best position to succeed? That's something that I notice from people who at least improve when they start, in terms of being great or not, being able to think long term. I think that's one of the variables that is important, because if you think in 2 year bursts and you want to accomplish all of your goals in 3 years, that might restrict yourself to make good decisions, safe, not safe, but the right decisions when you need to, when things are getting difficult. If you make a bad decision because you want to be better sooner, I think that can be kind of a shortcoming in terms of optimizing progress. Any thoughts on that?
There was something in that question about like whether a person should or shouldn't powerlift and compete. At the end of the day, I think anybody can. It's not a matter of whether you're going to be good or not. It's a matter of what you like to do for you, and if powerlifting happens to be what you like to do, and competing in the sport of powerlifting is how you like to express your joy for lifting weights, then friggin' do it. Doesn't matter whether you're good or not. For example, I think a lot of people would probably can say that, oh, maybe somebody with a mental disability or physical limitations like that shouldn't compete. But tell you what, some of the funnest meets that I've ever been to and volunteered at were for the Special Olympics, and it's truly amazing. And I'd highly recommend and encourage anybody out there that supports powerlifting to go volunteer and help out at one of those events. You'll learn a lot. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the other thing that Ross kind of brought up is, it's not really worth trying to predict whether a lifter's going to be good. If they want to improve, that's kind of what matters. That's what we're going to want to focus on, because if we start stacking bricks on bricks, we just keep getting better and better every week. If we do that long enough, at some point they're going to be pretty good. How long it'll take them to get a 500 Wilks score, I don't necessarily know the answer, and I will never know the answer. Will we be in the best position to continue to succeed? Are there certain characteristics about lifters that allow for that? Maybe, yeah. But I guess we're getting away from the actual question, and the reason is because there's so much nuance to this question. There's so many variables that can kind of happen to someone. Someone who's incredibly gifted could have an injury, and then they're done. They can't push past that point where they were peaking, or maybe they can, and then that's a question of whether or not they're capable of pushing through adversity. So there's a lot that can make an athlete good, but I think at the end of the day, if you want to do it and you want to improve, that's going to be the thing I'm looking for with people that I'm working with. We'll go maybe one more question.
One more?
Yeah.
Well, then we got to end it with. It's the best question.
Mm-hmm.
What'll it take to score a gym date and tea with Mike T?
Here's the thing. I know Mike's not here, so sorry, Mike, but we're gonna make fun of you for a second. I don't know if you're gonna want to go get tea. Is that what he said?
Yeah, gym date and tea.
Gym and tea. I think the issue is you're asking the wrong question. You need to ask him how to get a candy date. Because one thing that is gonna allow Mike to want to talk with you is, do you have candy? Sweets, like sweets and chocolate probably will help. If you send like 10 boxes of sweets to his house, I'm not telling you his address, but if you can figure that out, I imagine he'll be pretty grateful. And, maybe at that point he'll want to get some food and live with you. That'd be pretty cool. I imagine he wouldn't hate that.
I think we should give him his address and have everybody send him chocolates.
His address is so this is about 20 minutes. Usually we kind of keep these Friday videos around 5, so hopefully you're enjoying this. We're going to come back to these questions when we get Mike here in Poland, and look forward to next week. We'll probably have another Q&A, and if you have more questions, you want to be a part of these videos, send them to the Reactive Training Systems Instagram. It's just Reactive Training Systems. You can send a DM to us, and we'll make sure we have that logged, because we're always looking to figure out what you want to know and answer those questions and make it easier for you to build momentum and add weight to your bar every session. So thanks for watching this, and we'll talk to you next time.
Reactive Training Systems.